Damn, so much room for activities. I've managed to get the exterior of the 240 completely torn apart. Now I'm gonna move on to the interior, get rid of these nasty eBay seats. I'm gonna make a few little upgrades to the car. First off, I have to say, Kevmans did an amazing job on the new seats that are going into the car. They're forged carbon fiber with diamond stitch. I absolutely love the way they look and I can't wait to get them in there, but it's gonna have to wait because I got a lot of stuff to pull out first. These Street Faction ABS door panels are actually pretty sick, so I'm keeping these. Right away I realized I need to start cataloging everything. The exterior didn't really matter because I'm going to use all fresh hardware for that, but I need to make sure I keep everything organized. I've got these little baggies here. Same thing I used on my Quattro. Put all the bolts that go with a certain thing, you know, I got to save all the bolts for the seat rails, all the bolts for the door panel here, and make sure they're organized so that when I go to put the car all back together, I know where everything goes and it'll be way less of a headache. It's kind of fun, you know, organizing things. I like to be organized. Figure I should probably disconnect the battery too while I'm at. I have these interior lights that are gonna always be on when the doors are open, so that's just gonna end up killing the battery. Luckily, I have a little breaker over here. I can just hit a button and it disconnects the battery, which is really cool for just anti-theft and also just not killing the battery, but not so much anti-theft now that I told everyone about it. I don't mind these Takata seatbelts too much. They're all right, but they expire like every 4 years or something, so these ones are definitely expired. Might as well get something new, you know, since I'm changing it up. I'm keeping all the delete panels the same. I'm either gonna wrap them the same color as the exterior of the car, or I might wrap them white to match the interior, but I think the darker exterior color that I'm gonna go with is gonna be better. The white might be too much. I'm probably gonna replace this old stereo too. I mean, who watches DVDs anymore? I put this USB port in here to charge my phones and whatnot. Of course, it's nice to have instead of using the cigarette lighter. This one is an old, you know, USB-A style one, and it's pretty old. So I want to see if I can find one that fits exactly in this little square here where the delete buttons were for the original accessories. So it'd be nice if I could find one exactly like this. It actually says it's for a Toyota, and it's basically almost the exact perfect size to fit in there. So let's see if I can find a USB-C one on Amazon. This one's basically the exact same thing. Kind of cool. It has a voltage output. 0.9 by... Yeah, it's almost exactly the same thing. I think this will probably work. I'm gonna pull the other seat out. I'm sure I won't have a hard time giving these things away. Got tons of car friends, of course, and even quite a few neighbors that are into cars. I know some of them want to build sim rigs, so I'm sure they'll go quick. I knew that the seats had some UV damage on the corners here where the suede is. I could always tell the driver's side was getting a little beige looking, but I was trying to figure out what this stain was in the middle of the passenger side, and I realized it was actually the UV damage also. The seat belts on either side were protecting the fabric and keeping them more of the natural black. Hopefully it doesn't happen too bad to the new seats. It kind of makes me want to tint the windows of the car, but I'm not a huge fan of that. I do have to remember that I think these seats are about 8 years old and the car did sit outside a lot. Hopefully the new ones will stay a little bit nicer. This will be a great opportunity for me to replace this window switch finally that has been broken forever. What sucks is not only does the window switch not work, but it actually prevents the driver's side from rolling the window down too sometimes because this thing like shorts out. So I don't know why it took so long to just buy a new one and replace it, but I've got one sitting over there on the shelf that will definitely go in here soon. Here's the box of parts with some of the future things that are going on the car. Got the taillights I talked about. And here's the red Laminix. They actually call it transparent calendar film. But yeah, hopefully this makes the lights red and not pink or anything else. And yeah, that'll be really cool. I might do a little test strip. I'm kind of excited. I should probably stop messing around with stuff that doesn't matter. After I pulled this thing in the garage and started taking the interior out, I really started having a little bit of second guessing with myself and how much effort I actually wanted to put into this. Now that I'm looking in here though, the paint is super beat up. The hydraulic e-brake is definitely leaking. I can see that pretty obviously, and that destroyed the paint. So I need to figure out what's wrong with that thing and why it's leaking, because even if I respray this thing with the automotive paint that I'm gonna buy, it's still gonna ruin it. So you gotta be careful with that brake fluid. Try not to spill any more brake fluid than I already have. I texted my buddy a picture of the new seats and he's curious how heavy they were, so now I kind of want to know. Let's see if I can get these to balance on here. 23 it says. These Street Faction kick plates are another part that they make that I do really love. They make a lot of cool stuff. The only thing I didn't like was they were powder coated silver and they looked really nice when they were new, but I felt like they got scratched up so easily. I'm gonna send a few parts out to powder coat, so I might just include these in the batch. I wanna have a few things on the Quattro and the E30 both powder coated wrinkled black, so I think that would work really well for these. As I've been dismantling the interior, I noticed I used a lot of these button head Allen screws, and sometimes they can strip and it can be a major pain in the ass to get these out. So I think when I reassemble everything, I'm gonna replace all the hardware with something else. I might do like a hex cap, or I was thinking maybe even like a 12-point hex cap would be cool, kind of like what my BBS wheels have. We'll see. I know there's some pretty cool like BMX, like bicycle hardware out there that might be sick. Some anodized stuff for the screws that you see a lot. Might be a nice little touch. I've got to mention this again. It's kind of a similar thing to the roll cage, but I am never going to put anything on my car ever again that's raw steel. Even some of these riser washer things that I used, I didn't even realize these were raw steel. I probably thought they were aluminum, so I didn't paint them, but these things are fully rusted. I don't think I even ever put screws back in this thing when I took it out last. My old JDM cluster is still looking pretty good. I'd love to give the plastic a nice polish, make it brand new again. The lights sometimes flicker a little bit, so I might take and see if I can find where the short is and solder some wires back here so that the connection's nice and strong and stop that from happening. I'm gonna go grab some paint for the interior of the 240. I kind of got to drive across town to this paint store my dad recommended. I don't know anything about painting cars, so luckily it's just the interior. You know, if it doesn't turn out perfect, it's not that big of a deal, but I'm gonna take the Quattro. I haven't really driven the Quattro a whole lot since I drove it on that 2,000-mile trip to Salt Lake City, and it's been doing okay. The only thing that's bugging me is there's some kind of pop in the front right suspension. I'm not really sure what it is. Worst case scenario in your head, you're thinking like, I hope the whole wheel assembly doesn't go flying off on the freeway, you know, but pretty unlikely. But now the more I drive the car, the more worried it makes me. So hopefully it's just something, I don't know, that needs to be greased or oiled, or I don't know. I'm gonna take a look at it right now. I have the wheel turned, but I don't really see anything obvious in here. So I guess I'll just keep driving it, and then maybe once the 240 gets off the rack, I'll put it back up there and take another look. I don't want to wait until something breaks, obviously, but I don't know. I think it's just something with the coilover just popping. Maybe it just isn't seated right. When I got to Salt Lake, I greased them so that they would stop popping, but it could also be something going on with the steering linkage. The steering linkage is really old and worn out pretty bad. That'll be one of my future improvements after I figure out why the car doesn't start very easily. Oh great, the fuel pump's not coming on again. Oh, there we go. All right, this place is 23 miles away. Sure, we'll be fine. The car runs out pretty good once it's all warmed up. I can definitely feel a little bit of hesitation through the RPMs. It definitely makes the most power around 4,500 to 5,000. You almost don't really take this car to redline because it feels a little flat at redline. I think the air injection pump that controls the idle's messed up, and it's kind of messing with the air-fuel ratios. I feel a little bit of hesitation. I'm definitely going to replace all the sensors that I haven't replaced yet, and definitely do a lot of wiring repairs. We'll see. I might crank the boost up a little bit next summer and see if the motor can hold it, so that'll be fun to find out. I think I'm in the right place. It's kind of in a sketchy neighborhood, but I don't know. I will double check the Google Maps here. All right, so that place was pretty rad. Those guys definitely helped me out. Super happy to give me some pointers. I got some paint, some thinner. I actually even bought a spray gun. My dad was gonna let me borrow his spray gun, but I thought it'd be cool to have my own. I've just been using rattle can paint my whole life, and I feel like having a legit way to paint things would be really helpful and make things look a lot better and, you know, be a little more legit. I don't want to be that guy that just half-asses everything. Let's go home and try it out. This car still smells like burning oil. I think it's just oil leaking out of the engine, you know. The oil pan gasket definitely needs to be replaced. It might even be leaking from the oil pressure sensor. I've seen some oil kind of going down the side of the motor. I'll figure that all out once I pull it one day. Yeah, it still runs pretty good. I'm gonna unplug this air injection pump thing because honestly I think it's making the car run worse, so maybe better without it. I took the weekend off to hang out with the family, but I'm back in the garage now. I'm gonna get the rest of the interior torn out on the 240 so we can get this thing painted already. What's cool at least is the USB-C thing that I ordered for the center console should be here sometime today so we can test fit that And I also ordered a line lock for the hydraulic handbrake. And what I'm gonna do is actually set that thing up so it works as a parking brake. So when that shows up, I'll show you how that's all gonna work. Usually pulling dashboards on cars isn't very much fun, but this one's pretty simple. I've taken it out a couple times, so it's just a few more bolts and we should be able to pull this thing right out. Of course, I've always got the red in some pretty silly locations to get the shot. Check this one out. It's looking right through the window. My dash isn't in too bad of condition. I've actually considered replacing it with a carbon fiber one, but I've heard a few negatives about those, especially the amount of glare that you get off of them, and maybe it's just a little bit too race car for this car. A few years ago, I pulled the dash out and used some of that Bondo padded dash repair to fix some of the cracks, and it worked for a little while, but it eventually just ended up cracking again. So I think this time I'm gonna use some 2-part epoxy and see if that holds a little bit better, and then I'm gonna flock the dash. I've never flocked anything before, so hopefully that goes well and hides some of the imperfections. The last part of this exterior removal is probably the easiest. It's getting all these delete panels out, but these ones on the side panels are definitely the hardest. Since the cage is in here, it's really gets them stuck in between. Oh, there we go. So this 240 is a perfect example of what I think happens to most car guys, and I'm very guilty of it myself. And that is that you have a goal in mind that you want to build your car a certain way, and most of the times people want to build their car to be like a race car because it's cool, it's fun. What you find out in the long run is that a lot of things that go along with race cars are very loud and smelly and uncomfortable, and it makes your car less fun to drive as often. You know, you're not going to the racetrack and suiting up with a helmet every time you drive this car. So you actually kind of want it to be a little bit more comfortable and a little bit quieter, which is why I've done things like put delete panels to hide that gutted look and put, you know, ABS door panels instead of just having a piece of aluminum. So on these rear delete panels, these are made out of aluminum, which means they're a little bit rattly. So I might end up putting some sound deadening on the back of them. And instead of wrapping them in vinyl that matched the exterior, which I did like a lot, I might just end up putting carpet over them to try to bring back some of that creature comfort feel to the car without losing all of its cool race car-esque, you know, feeling. Everything is pretty much all out of the car now. The next step is going to be masking off all the things that I don't want to be painted, like the windows and the steering column, and also this wiring. This wiring is going to be kind of in the way of us painting. It's all over the place and it's in some crevices and things, and we're going to have to basically pull it back to get paint behind it. So I'm probably going to spend the rest of the day doing that. I really want to take my time and make sure that it looks really nice and that the paint job comes out good and there's not a lot of overspray everywhere. So hopefully when we paint this thing in a few days, it'll just be easy and ready to go. So I was pretty much all done working on the car for today, but Amazon finally came at 9 p.m. and they dropped off the USB-C charger. Here it is. It's pretty much the exact same thing, just has a USB-C. I think it'll fit just about perfectly in there. Might need a little bit of trimming, but that'll be cool. But what I'm really excited about is this basically hydraulic lockout, and what this does is by turning this, it'll stop hydraulic fluid from flowing. I'm gonna put it behind the handbrake so that when you push on the brake, whether it's with your foot or by pulling the handbrake, you can lock it, and that'll lock the pressure in the brake lines to act like a parking brake. My friend Matt Field showed me this. He uses this on his drift car to keep the thing from rolling away, because a lot of times when people do hydraulic handbrakes like I did, they take the mechanical e-brake out. Hopefully this will be a cool way of circumventing that and have a nice little way of having a parking brake for my car.